Lesson 14. Now, if we do have this chart, we can quickly just look at it, just to start off with. It's not the end of the world if you don't have it. We're looking almost chapter by chapter through the book of Revelation. Last week we looked at chapter 12, the woman and the dragon and the man-child. And then today we're on chapter 13, looking at the beast out of the sea and the beast out of the earth. We're looking at this chart that I gave you last week. All right. So this is just an idea to see where we've been and where we are today. So we're on chapter 13, and as you can see, it's on the second part of the 7 years of tribulation. It's in the second 3.5 years, and it's relatively in the middle of the book. All right, that's important. Chronology, a timeline of where we are. All right, so we're here at chapter 13 today. All right, and now we can go to our lesson chapter 14. This is really the only time that we're going to really reference Daniel. To understand the book of Revelation, it's good to have a good understanding of the book of Daniel, which we've already done. So you've already got all the groundwork laid out about the empires and the Antichrist. This is really the only part in Revelation that really directly references Daniel. All right. It says this: it would be wise for us to cross-reference the visions of Daniel and Revelation to discern and understand the ultimate enemy of mankind. Revelation 13, 1-7 describe the combination of all these previous empires. Remember the empires of Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. In the rise of the Antichrist, it is important to take note that the leopard, the bear, and the lion characters of Daniel are blended into symbolism of the beast in Revelation. In Revelation chapter 13, it talks about this beast that comes out of the sea, and it's got the same imagery as Daniel. Revelation 13 must be cross-referenced with Daniel chapter 7. This indicates that elements of previous empires will be featured in the rise of a superpower that will dominate the world. The world will be subjected to the reign of the Antichrist. Let's underline Antichrist because Revelation 13 is about the Antichrist. Remember I told before, Daniel's 70 weeks, there was this last week or 7-year period, and that is the 7 years of tribulation. And basically, it's good about it is Daniel ends on that last week in Daniel chapter 9 and chapter 11. And then Revelation in detail is the whole 7-year period. All right. So he talks about the Antichrist. Revelation talks about the Antichrist, and especially here in Revelation chapter 13. All right. So let's read Revelation 13, 1. It says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name." So again, we have John giving us symbols and imagery again, just the same as the last chapter, chapter 12. Remember, he spoke also there about a woman and a child, and about a dragon. And the dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns and crowns on its head. The dragon of Revelation 12 is not the beast of Revelation 13. They're 2 different animals completely. All right. So Daniel says he saw a beast rising out of the sea. It had 7 heads and 10 horns. This is not a literal animal. It's a symbolism of something. The interpretation is, for one of the only times in the book of Revelation, is given in Revelation chapter 17, 9-13. As I said before, most of the time in the book of Revelation, John doesn't give us the interpretation. He just gives us the symbol of the imagery. And we got to kind of work out, is this real or not? This is one of the only times where he actually does say, this is it, and this is the interpretation. The interpretation is not even given in that same chapter. It's actually given a couple of chapters later, in chapter 17. So he says this in Revelation 17. This calls for a mind of wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. The woman we're going to get to when we speak about Babylon the Great. They are also 7 kings. So the 7 heads are 7 hills and are 7 kings or kingdoms. He says 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. 7 heads are 7 kingdoms. 5 of those kingdoms have fallen, 1 is, and then 1 is still to come. But when he does come, he will remain for a little while. A little while literally meaning a few years. The beast who once was, and now is not, is the 8th king. Underline 8th king. So there's 7 heads, 7 kings or kingdoms. And then he says, out of all of those will come an 8th one. So there's the beast doesn't have 8 heads, it's only got 7 heads, but there will be an 8th kingdom after them. He belongs to the 7. He comes from those kingdoms. And he is going into destruction. So he tells us what the 7 heads represent. 7 kingdoms. And then the 10 horns. He says the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. The 10 horns is in reference to Daniel's horns. Remember, he also had a beast coming out of the seas with 10 horns, and those 10 horns represented 10 kingdoms. And those 10 kingdoms, we believe, is going to be a unification somewhere in Europe and the Middle East. It'll come out of the Roman Empire, the old Roman Empire. So the image of Daniel in Daniel chapter 2, remember the statue had 10 toes. The 10 toes represents 10 kings that will come in the future. The same as Daniel chapter 7, he speaks about the 10 horns. And here again in Revelation chapter 13, we have the same imagery. A beast with 10 horns. They all mean the same thing. It's a unification of countries in Europe and the Middle East. That is still to come. It has not come yet. It's still to come. All right. And before we go on, no, we can actually go on, and then I'll comment. So that's the interpretation. And even at that interpretation, it's still a bit wobbly. If you've read Revelation 13, and then you've got interpretation in chapter 17, you still are none the wiser, are you? Because I've just given you the interpretation, but still, Raymond, I have no idea what that means. What 7 kingdoms are you talking about? What are these 10 horns? So for that is a little bit of the commentary. It says the 7 heads are 7 empires, namely Assyria, Egypt, Babylon, Medes and Persians, they won, Greek, Roman, and a revived Europe. So first, before we do anything, you see where it says Assyria. Above Assyria, just write the number 2. The number 2. And then by Egypt, you can write the number 1. And then Babylon, write 3. And then the Persians, you can write 4. Don't worry about the Medes. As I said, they're one place. Medes and Persians are 1. And then 5 is Greek. 6 is Rome. And the Europe is 7. Okay? The only reason I'm giving you the numbers in order there is because the first 2, for somehow when I wrote this, I changed them around, but it shouldn't be. All right, so the 7 heads represent 7 kingdoms, 7 empires that rule the world. There's 2 things that they all have in common. They all ruled around the Middle East, and they all conquered Israel. And even the kingdom to come, through the Antichrist, will have the same characteristics. It will come from the Middle East, and it will also conquer Israel. All right, so are we all on the same page? We got the 7 empires. So ideally, the reason I said they put 1 by Egypt is because we all know the story of the slavery of the Jews in Egypt with Joseph and Moses and Exodus. All right, so they're the first kingdom in the Bible to rule around that area and conquer Israel. After that, the second empire that took over was Assyria. They came from the north, modern-day Syria. They conquered the northern kingdom of Israel and took all the people into exile into Assyria. And then the third one was Babylon. Babylon conquered the Syrians. All right. So the reason there's 7 here, remember we spoke about these in Daniel, but all of his empires started with Babylon. Babylon and forward. Revelation now gives us the 2 that happened before Babylon, Egypt and Assyria. All right. So the 7 heads or 7 kingdoms, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Greece, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then the future kingdom to come in Europe. He says 5 of these have fallen, which means 5 of these are no longer in existence at the time John was writing this. And those are the first 5. Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greek. When John was writing this revelation, the Roman Empire was in existence. He says 5 have fallen, they're gone. 1 is the Roman Empire, and 1 is still to come. The revived Europe. Are we all on the same page? It's not that difficult. All right, so all you got to know is 7 heads, 7 kingdoms, literal kingdoms that ruled the world. At the time of writing this, there was 1 ruling, Rome, and they're waiting for the one to come, which is the 10 kings. All right? And that's it. And then it says the 10 horns represent 10 regions of Europe, just above Europe, also right Middle East. I think it's pretty important also to include the Middle East in that. The old Roman Empire included Western Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. So if you look at that, the 10 kings will have to arrive and arise from that area, Middle East and Europe. And they will give their sovereignty to the false Christ. The false Christ is the Antichrist. All right? So the seventh empire is at Europe. And then after that, from those 10 kings or kingdoms, will arise the Antichrist. And he becomes the eighth one. You see why I told you to underline the eighth? Because that eighth kingdom is the Antichrist kingdom. All right? Are we, look up at me. Let me see your eyes. All glazed. I can see no cooking clue of what planet we are. It's not that difficult. 7 heads, 7 kingdoms. The eighth one is the Antichrist kingdom. It can't be easier than that. All right, there we go. So again, as I said, Revelation is a difficult book, and even with John, I love John, I love his images and stuff, but he doesn't really give us interpretations. And even if he does, it's still wobbly, to say the least. Are we? It says, now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet was like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So it talks about this beast, and it's given him an imagery of 3 animals, a leopard, a bear, and a lion. And if you remember from the book of Daniel, chapter 7, it talks about these same animals. The dragon gave him his power. Who is the dragon? Satan. We just confirmed that in our last chapter, in chapter 12. All right. So the devil himself, Satan, gives the Antichrist his power and authority. All right. And this could happen around this time. As I said before, people don't know if the Antichrist is always going to be wicked and evil, or is he going to be a time where he's given the authority and the power to rule? This could be what it's saying. At this time, in the middle part of the 7 years of tribulation, the devil then gives the Antichrist his power and authority, and he becomes the Antichrist, the evil one. Up to this point, remember, there's relatively peace on the earth. This Antichrist makes peace with everyone. So everyone loves him and thinks he's awesome until around chapter 13, where the devil gives him authority and power. And then he becomes a little bit of a nutball. All right. So let's look at those animals. The features of the end time beast has all the characteristics of previous empires and dictatorships, i.e. the leopard, the bear, and the lion. And this is cross-reference to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel said, in my vision I looked, and there before me was 4 winds of heaven, churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up from the sea. The first was like a what? Lion. John in Revelation mentions the lion. And there before me was a second beast, which was like a what? A bear. In Revelation chapter 13, it mentions a bear. And after that, I looked up, and there's another beast that looked like a what? A leopard. All right, the same animals that Revelation talks about. After that, at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. That was the Roman Empire. He didn't describe it. He didn't have an animal to put with it, but that 4th beast was the Roman Empire. And then it says in verse 16 and 17, I approached one of those standing and asked him the meaning of all of this. What is the meaning of these 4 animals? You can turn over the page. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. That's why I love Daniel. Daniel had a vision and he interpreted for us, and we really can't go wrong with it. He says, the interpretation of these things is this. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth. And the 4 kings from Daniel, we know, was Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. We've already substantiated that. This beast in Revelation chapter 13, received power from the dragon. Who is the dragon? Revelation 12:9 says who it is. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. All right. So we got the beast coming out of the sea. It's got 7 heads, representing 7 kingdoms. And then it talks more about this beast in particular. And it says this beast was given power and authority from Satan. All right. This beast in its entirety represents a person. The beast out of the sea represents the Antichrist. So somewhere on your page you can write that. Just actually underneath that part. On the second, just right there, beast out of sea equals Antichrist. Because then at least we know who the beast is. Even though the heads represent something else and the horns represent something else, the beast itself as a unit represents the Antichrist. And this devil will give the Antichrist his power and authority. All right, that's verse 2. Let's go to verse 3. And I saw one of his heads that was mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. The beast, again, the Antichrist. This verse may refer to one of the 7 empires that was destroyed, and no one thought it could be revived. Remember, it says that the heads were empires. And here it says that one of the heads were mortally wounded. So the first rule of interpretation is it must be talking about a kingdom. Because that's what we've just said. John just told us these heads are kingdoms. Now one of the heads are wounded. It must be a kingdom. But as usual, Revelation is never that clear. It says this: others believe that the one that leads this empire, the Antichrist, will be assassinated, but will not die, and therefore cause the whole world to wonder at his ability to defeat death. That's kind of what I agree also. Although it says that one of the heads of empires, it says that he's mortally wounded, and in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, it does give us more indication to this. And we'll probably get onto there near the end, where it talks about that. But underneath that, right, this along, Revelation 13, 12 to 14. And actually, somebody stole my Bible. Has anybody got a good NIV version Bible? Who's got a Bible with large print that I can look at quick? It's not a large print. Or anybody want to read that for us? There we go. It's just open your Bibles to Revelation 13, 12 to 14. We will touch on some of those verses, but let's just read it while we're here. There we go. Revelation chapter 13, we're going to just read 12 to 14, which talks about a person also dying and coming alive. Revelation chapter 13, right in the middle of the book of Revelation, verses 12 to 14. It says he exercised all the authority of the first beast on behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed, and performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from the heavens in full view of men. That middle part is an important part, whose fatal wound was healed. It's talking here about the beast and saying that he had a fatal wound and it was healed and everyone marveled over him. So I believe if you take it in context, this is probably talking about the Antichrist. In some way, thank you, Trevor, in some way, he will be assassinated. It says actually by a sword. So he'll be stabbed or assassinated in some way. He'll be near to death or die. The reports will come out on social media, this person is dead. And then like minutes later, he's alive again. And everyone will say, wow, this is awesome. This guy like was dead, he was assassinated, but now he's alive. He must be not normal. He must be a superhuman. He must be a superman. He must be the Messiah. All right. So that's what that part is talking about. It's talking about, I believe, the mortal wound is talking about the Antichrist himself. He will be assassinated and he will be revived and everyone will marvel after him. All right, so let's go back to our lesson. We in the middle there, it says Revelation 13, 4 to 5. So remember, you must always take into mind, we're talking about a beast, and the beast is the Antichrist. And from here onwards, from verse 3 onwards, it talks about, it personifies this beast. He. All right. So they worship the dragon. Who's the dragon? Satan. So midway through in the 7 years of tribulation, people will worship the devil. Like full on. All right. They will worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast. Satan gives authority to the Antichrist. And they worship the beast. So not only they worship the devil, they'll also worship the Antichrist. They'll revere him as a god. Remember, the Christians are not there. The body of Christ is not there. We raptured. So it's pretty much dodgy people around the world at that time. And they will believe anything. And they do. They actually will worship the Antichrist. It says this, they say, who is like the beast? Who is like the Antichrist? Who is able to make war with him? And he is given a mouth. So again, personifying the beast, it's a he. He was given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. The timeline is always important. 42 months is 3.5 years. So from the second part of the 7 years of tribulation, this is where we are now, midway, he's given now the authority to rule for 3.5 years till the end. Right. So before this, he's definitely going to be there. He's his political leader. People know him. He's made a peace treaty with Arabs and the Jews. Everything's going relatively good until the middle part where Satan literally controls him and takes over and gives him his authority, gives him his power. And then he rules for the next 3.5 years. All right. And that's exactly what it says. We must never read too much into it. We must take it as it says, and that's what it says. All right. And again, so we're talking about a person. We're talking about a person who can speak and is given authority and will rule. All right. So at this point, we definitely know that the beast is a person of sorts. And this beast is the Antichrist. Blasphemies, we know that. Not only will he blaspheme the name of God, he wants to be God. Everyone will worship him as God and he exalts himself as God. Remember, Daniel spoke about in length about that. He exalts himself above God. And then it says in 6 and 7, then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle or temple, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. This is not Christians, because Christians are already in heaven. We've been raptured. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation. This is kind of the one that's a little bit of a gray matter. Will the Antichrist be in control of the whole world? Will he be the world dictator? Or will he rule over the area of the Middle East and Europe and just have influence over the whole world? All right. Based on that, it says that he'll rule over everyone. I don't think that he will. I think his main base will be around Europe and the Middle East, and he'll have influence in the rest of the world. But he will, I don't believe personally, this is my opinion, I don't believe the Antichrist will be a world dictator who will rule over Australia, South America, Antarctica, Canada, and all these places. All right. He'll come from the Roman Empire, which is Europe and Middle East, and that's where his base will be set up. It actually says that his throne will be in Babylon, which is Iraq, and he will rule in Jerusalem. All right. So that's just my personal opinion. I know there are some other people that believe that he will be a world dictator in charge of the new world order. All right. But either way, it says he will make war with the saints, tribulation believers. And now we know who the saints are. They people who come to know the Lord during the tribulation. The saints are God's kingdom people, believe in Israel. Remember, everything that happens in Revelation is about Israel. Everything that happens here is in Jerusalem and Israel. So the first people that become Christians and become believers are the Jews. This is the whole book of Revelation is the judgment of the Jews. It's called Jacob's trouble. There will be other people around the world that will definitely also become Christians because they'll see what's happening, they'll have the Bible, they'll go to YouTube and say, well, this is probably what's happening, and they'll also become Christians. But we must always remember the epicenter of everything we're talking about is Jerusalem. All right, everything that we're talking about in Revelation starts in Jerusalem, the Jews, Israel, Middle East, outward, outward, outward. All right, so these believing saints will probably be believing Jews. All right. And then we finished. We can end off early today. I'm not going to keep you 5 minutes later. Are there any questions thus far? All you got to get is the beast, is the Antichrist. If you got that, you got the rest of it. And when you read this, which you will during the week, when you read Revelation 13, you got to have that in mind. All right, so you got to read it and think, okay, what I'm reading is about the Antichrist. Does it make sense? And it does. All right. And then there's another beast that comes in Revelation chapter 13, and that's a beast out of the earth. So we just spoke about the beast out of the sea, the Antichrist, political ruler that will form his eighth kingdom, that will be in the last 3.5 years of the 7 years of tribulation. He'll be the eighth king, and he will go out to destroy Israel. We know that from Revelation chapter 12. Remember, the dragon is after the woman and the man-child and the remnant of Israel. And then next to him, there's also another person, the beast out of the earth. It says this in 11 to 13 of Revelation chapter 13. Then I saw the second beast coming out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It seemed innocent, but it spoke like the devil. All right, that's basic. It's kind of like a wife, say Trevor. I'm only kidding. Hey, if you can ask me. Hey. Trevor said that. I didn't say that. No, all right. So there's a beast that comes out. He has like the appearance of a lamb. You know, he seems to be innocent, but he speaks like the devil. And it exercised all authority of the first beast on its behalf. So they worked in tandem and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. So the second beast comes out, it works alongside the first beast, the Antichrist, and it forces people to worship the Antichrist. And then it says, the part that we read before, whose fatal wound had been healed. So somehow during this time, there's going to be someone that will try to assassinate him, the Antichrist, and he doesn't die. As I said, either he does die, and like miraculously he comes alive, which is fine with the book of Revelation, or he nearly dies and still comes alive. Okay, so he's fatally wounded, he comes alive. And then this second beast out of the earth, it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. There was a prophet in the Old Testament that also done this. Any ideas? Who called fire down from heaven? Elijah. Yeah, Elijah. So this guy will be a prophet of sorts, right? Because of Elijah, right? So he'll be a prophet that will do miraculous signs and wonders, that will let people all not follow him, but also follow the Antichrist. This beast out of the earth is the false prophet. All right, so underline false prophet. So the whole book of Revelation, or the whole chapter of Revelation 13 is about two beasts. Beast out of the sea, the Antichrist. The beast out of the earth, the false prophet. All right, and that's all you need to get. That's if you get that, I've done my job, you've done your job. So this beast out of the earth will be more of a religious leader as opposed to the Antichrist. Is going to be more militant, more political. He's hell-bent on conquering the whole world, and that's kind of his motivation. This guy will be his spiritual 2IC. This will be the guy that will cause like fire to come down from heaven. He'll cause people to worship the beast. He'll do all miraculous signs and wonders and things like that. So I can't pinpoint any person to give you an example, but it'll be like a religious 2IC. All right, and he'll force everyone to worship the Antichrist. And then the last part, which is probably one we're very familiar with. If you've never read Revelation 13, you probably know about this verse. It says in 16 to 18, it also, this is now the false prophet, forced all people, great and small, rich or poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could buy or sell. They could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. The mark, which is the name of the beast and the number of his name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and its number is 666. So yeah, if there's nothing else you know about Revelation, I bet you've heard of 666 before, all right? And this is where it comes from. And it's nice that it's right at the end. It talks about the Antichrist. So just get the timeline. It's in the middle of the 3.5 years, 7 years, the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. He comes to power. He starts to rule, starts to conquer, starts to become a real nutball. Next to him is this false prophet, this religious leader of sorts who forces everyone to worship the Antichrist. All right? And then these guys work together, and it says that the false prophet is the one who then forces everyone in the world to get a mark on his right hand or forehead. And if you don't have this mark, you can't buy or sell anything. So it's like a credit card or something. I mean, if you don't have that, you won't be able to buy or sell anything. So if you need to feed your family, you'll get the mark. In the story. I mean, and remember, Christians are not around this time. So the world will just be duped into it. Yeah, why not? All right, look how easy it is to get the vaccine when COVID came. Everyone just said, yeah, yeah, sure. Punch me up, punch me up. All right. So what is the mark of the beast? I don't know. Right? I know it's going to be a physical mark. It's going to be on the forehead or the right hand. All right. So there is an indication this could be some sort of a barcode. It could be. I mean, nowadays, we have this, what is it called? The GQR barcodes that we scan. And so, sorry? Yeah, Q, all those things. So it could be something like that. It could be a barcode that they're going to tattoo onto your thing. And when you go to a shop, spa, or something, you have to scan it, and then they say, okay, you're legit, you can go buy and sell. It could be that. Sorry, I'll come back to you, Norman. And then the other thing, they say it could be a chip, or RIFD chip, a radio frequency chip that will be implanted into your hand. And the same thing, you'll be able to scan this at a shop, they'll scan it and say, okay, you can do it. So it could be something like that. The Bible doesn't give us too much indication of what the mark is. It just says it will be a mark, right hand or forehead, and this mark will represent the name and number of the Antichrist. All right. So beyond what Revelation 13 tells us, it's speculation. All right. I can't say if it's going to be a chip or a barcode. It could be something else at that time. All right. But that's the idea is it will be a physical mark. The reason I don't really like the chip idea is because it's very hard to get a chip into the forehead by any means. All right. So I don't think it's going to be a chip. I know there's a lot of sensations about this radio frequency chip that's in people, and there's a lot of hoo-ha about it. I don't really see any evidence to that yet. And it's been around for the last like 50 years. But I haven't read any credible, like scientific papers about this chip that is implanted. I've just heard a lot of yes and a lot of like sensationalism on the internet and YouTube. I like a barcode idea. I like any sort of a imprint on your hand or forehead. Not necessarily a barcode, but some sort of a symbol that they can scan and it will give them details. All right. So before I carry on, Norman? It could be. That's a good idea. Norman says it could be a barcode like on the hand and the chip in the hand and the barcode on the forehead, anything like that. But we know it's going to be a physical mark on right hand or forehead. And the number 666, simply what that means is in the Greek alphabet, every letter is assigned a number. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. All right, so that's the first 5 letters of the Greek alphabet. And each of those has a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you go through the rest of the alphabet, they all assigned a number. When you get to 10 to 20, it goes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. When you get the last remaining ones, it goes from 100, 200, 300, 400. Okay? And that you can look on the internet. I'll just printed a little thing out for you, but you can look it on the internet. Every Greek letter has a number assigned to it. All right? So the idea is the Antichrist, if you take his name, whoever he is in the future, and you take his name and you work it back to the numbers, those numbers will add up to 666. And that is it. That's how simple it is. And you can do that yourself when you get home. There's lots of little calculators on the internet. You can go to one that says number of the beast calculator, believe it or not. You can type in your name and see what your number comes to. I done mine. Do you know what my number came to? 665. I was so close. I got a bit scared there. I thought, wow, that's too close for comfort. I did, but it depends on what website and how they calculate it. But anyway, that's the idea. You put your name in there and it will pop out your number. So that'll be the idea. In the future, they say there will be this guy and all the stuff's happening and we say this is definitely the Antichrist. We can take his name, we can plug it into the computer and it will pop out 666. The mark of the beast will be the number of his name. And that's what it is. So you can go do that yourself. For example, if I take Ray, our name Raymond, and it depends what name. Do you take Ray or Raymond? Do you take your second name or just your third name? It's like Bill Clinton. Is it Bill Clinton or William Clinton? Bill Gates. It's all. So you got to. I don't know. I don't know if it's your first name, last name, all 3 names, all of your names. I don't know. But if I take my name Ray, for example, in the Greek there's no Y, so it's only R and the E. All right. And if I work that out, just taking Ray based on the letters of the Greek alphabet and the numbers, the number comes to 108. All right. And that's the same as what you'll do. You'll take your name, for example, Trevor, type it in, it will give you the numbers, it will add it up, and then it will be 666 without a doubt. All right. But you can go do that just for fun. And people have been doing this throughout history for the last 2,000 years, from the time of Nero. They have been taking the names of political leaders, Caesars, popes. Sorry? Kissinger. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry has been dragged through the coals, and their names miraculously popped up to 666. Remember, the 666 can only be applied to somebody that fulfills the criteria of Revelation chapter 13. It'll have to be after the rapture of the church, after the building of the temple. It'll have to be midway through the 7 years of tribulation. It will be a leader that will be there, and he'll have a false prophet next to him. So before we even get to the mark of the beast and 666, all of that has to be done. So you can't just pinpoint somebody today and say this is him, unless everything else has already been fulfilled. All right. So it's useless to do that. It's just you're wasting your time doing that. Just don't. Unless you're living during a tribulation and this happens, then go do it. But before that, you're just wasting your time. It's a speculation. You're never going to find out who the Antichrist is by 666. Somebody had their name up. Norman, hand up. Yeah. Yeah, Kaiser Nero. Yeah. And especially because this was the time when this was all done. Nero was the Caesar who reigned during this time. So if there was going to be an Antichrist, it would be him. You know, just point to him. And they took his name and they worked it out. And look, it came to 666 again. And again, from then onwards, everybody's been Antichrist. Kissinger, Hitler, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Mandela, everybody has been. Elon Musk has been Antichrist. So yeah, we can't do that. It's just, sorry? They're practicing. It's 2,000 years of practice here. But as I said, unless the Antichrist, the person that you have in mind, fulfills all what the Bible says about him, after the rapture of the church, the building of the temple in Jerusalem, a peace treaty between Muslims and Jews, and all of these things. So there's like about 20 things that must happen even before you get to 666. All right, so don't do that. All right, so now we've done Revelation chapter 13. Again, look at your chart. Look how far we are already. Look how far we've come in the book of Revelation. All right, and so far, yes, scary stuff, sometimes confusing stuff. But now that we got the overview of the different chapters, it's not too bad. So now you can go read Revelation 13 at home, very quietly, spirit-filled, and you can understand what it's about. Right? And that's what we want. We're not going to get the details of who the Antichrist is and what the mark of the beast is. All you need to do is understand what is Revelation 13 about, and do you get the big picture? It's about the Antichrist and the false prophet. End of story. All right. And then next week we carry on, and it's probably the trumpets coming up. Yeah, we're looking next time at the bowl judgments, the 14, 15, 16. And then we got a lesson on Babylon the Great and about Ezekiel 38. So we kind of, at this point, almost winding down the book of Revelation until it blows up at Armageddon again. But we're kind of winding down for a bit, yeah. Are there any questions with Revelation chapter 13?